Kelly Palmer es reconocida como líder de pensamiento en aprendizaje, negocios y desarrollo profesional. En la actualidad es integrante del equipo ejecutivo de The Grid y antes fue directora de aprendizaje de LinkedIn. Es coautora del libro The Expertise Economy: cómo las empresas más inteligentes utilizan el aprendizaje para participar, competir y tener éxito, que fue nombrado una de las mejores publicaciones de negocios de 2019. Kelly es speaker regular en empresas y conferencias de negocios de todo el mundo. Ha publicado en Harvard Business Review, Financial Times, Fast Company, Entrepreneur, Inc. y Barron's, entre otros medios especializados de prestigio global.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelly Palmer and I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Degreed, and I'm also the co-author of the book, The Expertise Economy. It's so great to be here with you today, and I'm going to be talking a bit about how to upskill the workforce. You know, I've spent my whole career in Silicon Valley, and I actually changed careers about mid-career. And what I decided was I wanted to move into the learning and education field. And as I have spent time in Silicon Valley in running very large learning organizations for companies like Sun Microsystems and Yahoo and LinkedIn, I realized that learning was somewhat antiquated, even at these big high-tech companies in the center of where technology is. And so, one of the things that I've been focusing on since I got into the learning field is the intersection between technology and education and how we can actually solve one of the biggest issues of our time, and that's upskilling the workforce. So let's get started. Okay. So, as I mentioned, upskilling is one of the biggest challenges of our time. And we can see that by all of the companies that are making major investments in upskilling their workforce. I think Amazon was one of the first companies to announce that they were going to be investing over $700 million in upskilling their workforce. And part of that is due to the trends in the workforce: automation, digitization, and acceleration, how fast things are moving in the world of work today. The interesting thing about Amazon's upskilling strategy is that because of automation, they realized that a lot of their workers were not going to have jobs in the future, and they wanted to help people stay employable. So they were actually upskilling some of their workforce to continue for the jobs of the future, but for others it was to remain employable and perhaps even go into other fields like healthcare and education. The latest company to actually announce that they are investing a lot of money in upskilling their workforce was PwC, and they announced that they're going to be spending over $3 billion in upskilling their workforce. So let's talk about what upskilling actually is. Upskilling is this idea that you want to invest in employees' continuous learning. You want to understand what their strengths and weaknesses are, identify those skill gaps, fill the skill gaps with amazing learning, and really ultimately keep people employable. So PwC does a survey every year, and they ask CEOs around the world what are the things that they're most worried about for their business moving forward. And interestingly enough, in 2018, the availability of key skills was the number 5 issue that CEOs were most worried about. In 2019, that actually moved up to number 3. And so you may ask, so why are CEOs so worried about whether their employees have skills for the future? And what we know is that if your employees don't have the skills that they need to be able to, go forward in the future of work, companies won't be able to innovate and they won't be able to pursue new market opportunities. So it's really critical for both companies and individuals to remain competitive in the workforce, that they have skills that will take us into the future. So the latest PwC survey that was released in January of 2020 found that only 18% of companies are actually putting together advanced upskilling strategies for their companies. And although that number isn't that high yet, these companies that have put together upskilling programs at their companies have found that they have amazing results so far. So 60% of them have said that they've got a stronger company culture and that their employees are actually more engaged. 50% have said increased innovation has happened, but even maybe more importantly, this at this point in time is that most companies are going through some sort of digital transformation, and so they're also seeing that their digital transformation initiatives at their company are also accelerating. And then this idea that if you actually invest in your employees development and helping them build new skills for their careers, you can actually attract more talent and then retain the talent that you actually already have. So those are some amazing benefits and metrics that we can see from companies that are putting together advanced upskilling strategies. So, one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, how do I actually create an upskilling strategy? Okay, I understand that there's a lot of trends happening in the workforce. I understand this urgent need for creating an upskilling strategy, but I'm not quite sure how to go about it. So, that's what we're going to focus on today. And before we actually get into the specific steps for creating an upskilling strategy, I think it's really important to understand that we need to get away from old work models. Most work models of the past have been very company focused. And this is what I mean by that. That a lot of companies, especially when it comes to learning and building new skills, they've actually said, we're going to tell our employees what they need to learn, when they need to learn it. And often it wasn't really relevant to employees. So, this command and control model where companies are in control of what happens just isn't really relevant anymore. Also, a lot of companies would design and develop training programs or learning programs that for everyone, a one size fits all approach. And we know now through research that that's not effective at all. And in fact, companies spend billions of dollars every year putting together programs that actually don't help their employees learn anything. So we need to change that idea. The next thing that we've seen in terms of old work models is that companies have really been focused on efficiency of their employees. And if I do create a upskilling program or a learning or a training program, what's the ROI on that? And I think that given the metrics that I showed you a little earlier, you'll notice that the ROI isn't the first thing that companies are seeing in terms of the investment, although it's implied. Also, old work models have been very transactional and really not very strategic. So that needs to change. And we've had very unconnected HR functions. I know when I was the chief learning officer at LinkedIn, I had a huge organization and I focused on developing the employees that were already at LinkedIn. Yet we also had several hundred people in our talent acquisition and recruiting functions at LinkedIn. And they were focused on recruiting external talent, and yet we never connected much. So we'll see in old work models, those functions work separately, but they need to be working together more. And ultimately, these old work models that have been very top down, driven by what the company thinks is right, are very antiquated and uninspiring. So, let me give you an alternative of what you can do. First of all, I think it's crucial that we reimagine human work. We know with the trends that I already mentioned with automation and digital transformation that now machines and robots are going to take over a lot of those process based tasks and those routine tasks. And what that means for the future of work is that humans are going to be focusing on creating more value rather than working on routines and process based work. And I think that that's actually a really good thing. Most people want to focus more on more meaningful work and work that's creating more value. So if we think about work for the future, these are the functions that are really going to be changing. So in recruiting, the old model I mentioned, they focus on external talent. And the new model, I think we'll see recruiting focusing more on internal talent, looking not just for when they have opportunities, looking at outside people, but really looking inside and saying, what talent do we already have? And what skills do those people have that we can actually tap for our own company? Competencies are really very complex and not used very often because once you create them, they're usually out of date when you're looking at a model. So instead of complex static models, we're going to be moving more to simple skill frameworks. In performance management, we're moving more towards employee feedback on a regular basis. And for learning and development, I think that this is incredibly important that we don't want to see learning and development organizations just be a team that takes orders. I need training for that, or I need training for this. Learning and development organizations need to have a strategy that helps drive the business strategy. And so we'll see that change coming as well. And then for career development, most companies have really focused on high potential employees and leadership and management development. But building skills is for everyone. We need to be focusing on all of our employees, not just a select few. So here's the new idea of work that we really focus on individuals. And I think that means, and we've been talking about this for a while now, but haven't really made that full transition, that employees need to own their own personalized development. The second thing is that employees really need to understand and fill their own skill gaps. If they understand what skills they have and what skills they need, they'll be better prepared to understand what learning they need. Employees can learn and grow inside the company. I think it's very interesting that a lot of times employees feel like if they're going to grow their career, they actually have to leave their company to do that. But we know if we really focus on individuals, they can find new opportunities and grow inside the company. And the way we can do that is really by understanding people's skills, we can match new projects and jobs that are happening inside the company to the skills employees have and are building for the future. And if we have this new work model and we really embrace it, one that's individual focused, employees are engaged, they can find purpose and have impact. And that's good for both individuals and the company. So focusing on the individual is really about tying learning to building skills and then matching those skills to new opportunities within your company. So let's look at the individual experience in a little more detail. So a lot of times companies will introduce learning programs and say, okay, here's a learning program that we're offering. You need to take it and we'll give you credit for participating. But that doesn't take into consideration anything that the individual really cares about. And what do they care about? Individuals care about their careers. They care about their own professional development. So I think when you focus on the individual, you first need to focus on understanding what individuals' career goals and dreams are. Because if you understand that, especially as a manager, you can help your employees go in the right direction and help collaborate with them to figure out what critical skills they actually need. And one of the questions a lot of employees will ask is, what is my goal? Am I trying to get better at the job that I have today? Or am I trying to get ready for the next step in my career? But once they understand that and understand what skills they have and might need, then they can actually do the learning to fill the skill gaps. And I think that that's so important because we often skip those first two steps and we just jump to the learning and maybe not even to fill skill gaps. And so, lastly, then we can say what jobs and projects can help individuals grow. I can ask that for myself as an individual. If I just learned about data science and data analytics skills, I can say, okay, what jobs and projects might I work on that will help me grow and actually apply those skills. So I think that the result of really focusing on the individuals is that employees are motivated to learn. They're building skills that are transferable across organizations, and they're engaged in work, really having critical skills to solve real business problems. So, this is what success looks like. If you are a manager and and you're wondering, what is it that how will I know whether my employees are feeling like they're getting the development that they need? And the first question is that, if your employees can answer these questions in a positive way, managers will know they're on the right track. So if I'm an employee and I say, okay, when I'm at work, I clearly understand what is expected of me. Managers, that's part of your job to help employees know what's expected of them. If employees say, you know what, I know if I do excellent work, I'm going to be recognized for it. And so managers need to figure out how to help praise people for the great work that they're doing. When individuals can say, in my work, I'm always challenged to grow, that's a really positive thing. And then lastly, if individuals can say, I have a chance to use my strengths every day at work, that means that they feel great about coming to work every day and that they're being used to their highest potential. So, really, this is all about understanding the individual experience at work. So, just because we're focusing on the individual doesn't mean that this isn't creating huge value for your company. I mean, one of the biggest things that focusing on the individual does is really help you create an integrated and dynamic talent and skills strategy. And that's really what HR and learning and talent professionals have always strived for. How can I create a talent and skills strategy that helps our business but also helps the individual? So that first step is really understanding employees' career goals, understanding, the skills employees have and need, and using data to do that. Getting insights on learning and skill progress, and you can do that. Data is now more important than ever, but if you have data that can tell you this is what people are learning, these are the skills that they're building, and you can see how your employees are progressing along in that skills journey, that's amazing. That's probably the most important thing that technology has done to help managers really understand how to really get a grasp on their talent strategies. And then lastly, if you have the data about what skills people have and that they're building, then you can match people's skills with internal jobs and projects. So this idea that we can measure progress and get insights from data is probably the most important thing we can be doing in the talent and learning industry. So now I'm going to jump into the steps for upskilling your workforce. So the first step is actually to identify future skills. And you can do that at three levels. You can do that at the company level, say what are the skills that are most important for the company to succeed moving forward. And a lot of companies at that level might say, for example, digital literacy is really important at the company level, that all of our employees have digital literacy. You can also focus on the org level, especially if your company is really big and it's hard to get a handle on just identifying a few skills at the company level. You can look at the organizational level, for example, and focus on your marketing team or your sales team and identify a few skills that are really important there. And then at the individual level, I think every individual needs to ask themselves, what are the skills for the future that I'm going to need, again, to either get better at the job that I have or get ready for my next career opportunity. The second step in the upskilling process is really to assess the critical skills. And you can do that in a variety of ways. You can do that through an assessment, through self assessment, a skill review that actually talks about what you can do, not just what you know. But I think the most important reason that you want to assess critical skills is it gives you a baseline on where individuals are starting. And this is a step that's often missed and is so critical because if people are learning and building skills, how do you, if you didn't establish a baseline, how can you show the progress people are making, or that an org is making, or that a company is making? So that's really important. The third step is about setting upskilling goals. And again, you can set goals at the company level, at the organizational level, or the individual level. So, for example, one company I'm working with has said that they're going to upskill 25% of their workforce in data science and data analytics skills. And they've given themselves a time frame by which they're going to do that. And so that's a great goal to have, and they're marching towards that. Another company that I'm working with has said, well, we're just going to focus on our marketing team, and we want 25% of our marketing team to learn data analytics skills. And at the individual level, I always suggest that if individuals are wondering, how do I think about building skills for the future, focus just on one skill and say, okay, I'm going to complete this one skill by this such and such a date. If you have a goal, then you have a way to really motivate yourself to keep going. The fourth step is around mapping learning to skills. And this is really important. There's a variety of learning that's available to people, and they may choose that they're going to do some sort of blended learning program, especially in these times of COVID, where you might be doing a virtual session through video, like what we're doing today, but then you're also incorporating collaboration tools for peer-to-peer feedback and ways to actually bring together a cohort of people on a team project and peer-to-peer feedback. So there's a variety of ways you can learn about and upskill your workforce that way. So, but mapping, say you want to learn data analytics, map that skill to the right learning program that's going to help employees build those skills. The next step is measurable progress. And again, if we didn't do step number two, where you've actually got that baseline, it would be really hard to measure skill progress. But since we have that baseline that we identified in step two, now we can say, okay, here's a metrics dashboard. We've seen that we have 25% of our workforce at this level or with these skills. Now we can show that we have this many people with this skill at this level. And you can get signals from a variety of sources when you're measuring skill progress. For example, companies like edX have nano degrees or micro degrees. You've also got Skill IQ from Pluralsight. Degreed has a way to measure skills through our self-assessments and skill review or certifications. The great thing about this is being able to take all this data, all these signals from a variety of sources to really show how your people are building those skills. And then step six is about matching skills to opportunities. And this is where I highly recommend that if somebody's just learned, for example, presentation skills, then you want to give them a stretch assignment and say, why don't you actually give a presentation to a larger audience so we can give you feedback? Why don't you work on this project so you can actually apply your new skills on this project? And sometimes there's even an opportunity to get a new job or role within the company. So that's what matching skills to opportunities is all about. And again, data will help you do that. And then the last step is about communicating metrics for success. And this is different because this is where you're actually communicating the business metrics, like something a CEO or a top business leader would communicate, that as a result of our upskilling program, we've now got a stronger culture and engagement. We've now been able to innovate faster, that our digital transformation is moving along more quickly than it was before. These are the same kind of metrics that I showed at the beginning of the talk around what when we asked CEOs, what did they see when they were actually implementing advanced upskilling strategies. These were the kind of metrics for success at the business level that they were talking about. A couple of other examples around that is, for example, the number of people growing their careers with new projects and opportunities. That's a really great way to show how you're actually making progress. How many people have gone from individual contributor to maybe a manager or supervisor, or the such. So those are some of the metrics that we can think about. So these are the 7 steps for upskilling your workforce, and so I hope this gives you a good idea of if you're contemplating putting together an upskilling strategy, that this gives you an actionable way to look at how you can actually create that strategy. Now, there's a few other things that I wanted to mention because I get asked so often, okay, this is great. I love having these strategies for creating an upskilling strategy, but learning culture is so very important to the overall upskilling of your workforce or any learning that you're doing. So I often get the question, how can I create a learning culture? And so in the book, The Expertise Economy, we talk about this that, culture is a journey and it's an ongoing one. But we know some of the most successful companies and forward thinking companies are really focusing on their culture. And an example I have is Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. And he actually, when he took over as the CEO of Microsoft, realized that they really needed to change their culture. They had a culture of know-it-alls, of competition, and he said, we've got to change our culture from where people feel like they know it all to a culture where people are learn it alls. And he used himself as an example. He said, as a new CEO, I have things to learn all the time. And he made himself vulnerable to say, look, I don't know everything. I still need to learn all the time, every day. And so I'm giving you permission to think that way too. So this idea that you can move your culture away from know it alls to learn it alls, I think is a really powerful one. And also in the expertise economy, we actually talk about what kind of learning culture you have and identifying that and finding out where you want to move. And most companies, at least, if they don't have any other kind of culture, they at least have a compliance training culture. And that's at the very lowest level. You might have compliance training because you have to for regulatory purposes. But if you want to move to a more continuous learning culture, you have to move through some of these steps. So the next phase people usually go through is necessary training. And that's training that actually is based on your job requirements. What are the tools you're going to use at the job? What are the processes you need to follow? But this isn't really about building new skills. This is really training on how to do your job. So I think when people get to a higher level of creating a learning culture, they get to a learning culture. And this is where we really focus on strategic initiatives to help people build skills and capabilities. A lot of what we've been talking about today in terms of creating an upskilling strategy, that's really where you want to be. And then ultimately, where I think most companies want to be is even at that next level where learning culture is about continuous learning, where people are feeling like they're learning every day as part of the flow of work, and that they make choices to build new skills and capabilities every day. So the last thing I want to mention about a successful upskilling strategy is how pivotal the role of a manager is, because CEOs can talk about investing in upskilling programs, and L&D organizations and learning organizations and HR organizations can talk about, here's the programs that are available, here's what we think people, here's the learning that we've created as a result of that or enabling as a result of that. But unless managers actually embrace that and enable their employees to learn and grow, it's not going to happen. And so, through research, we know that employees don't leave companies, they leave managers. So, the other reason people leave companies is that they don't feel like they have opportunities to learn and grow. So, if you're a manager, you know you're the linchpin. You're either going to enable your employees to learn, or you're going to say no, learning's not important, and I just care about you getting your job done. Managers are going to say either no, I want you to stay in my organization and I just want you to do this job that I have for you, or they're going to say, look, I want you to grow and develop your career, and there's lots of opportunities within our company for you to learn and grow, and I'm going to help you do that. So I encourage all managers to really take that mindset that it's part of their job to help their employees learn and grow. The employee value proposition of the future is, not, oh, what if I give people learning and then they leave the company? It's more about, no, we're going to invest in you and help you build skills for your career, and in return we expect you to give 110%. And what we've found, and I know my experience in the learning industry at a lot of these big companies, is if you have this attitude about your employees, they will want to stay at your company. They will want to work for you. And so I think that that's the employee value proposition we need to be embracing. We did some research with Degreed and Harvard Business Publishing last year on how the workforce learns. And one of the questions we asked was, what are your biggest obstacles to learning or professional development? The number one answer was that they don't have time or make time to learn. And again, I think that has a lot to do, one, with the individual. If it's important to the individual, they will make time to learn, even if it's on their own time. But the other issue is around the manager. Is the manager giving people time to learn as part of their job? That's really important. The next three items also have to do with managers. Um, they Employees really want to be in control of their own learning, and they want the autonomy to choose how and when they learn, but they really want guidance from their managers about what's most important. Like, if I'm in marketing, what are the skills of the future that I should be focusing on if I want to be really successful in your organization or for my career? The second thing is that oftentimes companies and managers don't recognize or reward learning, and so that's, it's as simple as saying, what are your career goals? What are you learning? Helping people set career goals, and then when they do that, actually recognize them and say, and be an example to others. Like, this is what I'm learning, and this is what I encourage you to do. And when people are learning new skills, reward them for doing that. By new projects and opportunities is one way to do that. And then lastly, it states my manager doesn't encourage or enable learning. I think that this is so key. I mean, have discussions at your staff meetings about how important learning is. Ask people to block out time on their calendar to make time for learning, because it's so important, not only to individuals, not only to team success, but for company success. And when managers understand that and individuals understand that, the companies win. So the manager's role is key, as I've mentioned. They need to set clear expectations, have career conversations with individuals, give guidance on future skills, identify what the strengths are of their employees, and then actually give them projects that really emphasize those strengths. Managers need to encourage, enable, and reward learning, as we just talked about. Praise excellent work. This seems so easy, yet oftentimes we're so busy we forget to say, "Oh my God, you just did an amazing job," and I'm really pleased with what you did. And then lastly, help employees find new projects to apply their skills. That's really going to make you an amazing manager. So to summarize today, you know, it's so incredibly important that we upskill the workforce for the future. It is the biggest challenge of our time, and we can imagine our future workforce in a new way. And we want our people to be more skilled, more engaged, and ultimately creating more value. That's great for the individuals. It's great for the company. And then, for companies, ultimately, it's about, the benefits that companies want is about growth. It's about innovation, and it's about creating value so that they can go after new market opportunities as well. So this is what's possible if you put together an upskilling strategy for your company. And so I just want to thank you for joining me today. You can actually follow me on Degreed, and you can see what I'm learning and the skills that I'm building every day. And you can follow me on kelly@degreed.com, and also feel free to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, thank you for your time today, and I am so pleased that I was invited today to explain a little bit about how you can create an actionable upskilling strategy.